In South America, a territorial disagreement lasted more than half a century. For 57 years, Andean neighbors Peru and Ecuador argued over a piece of the Amazon jungle. It pushed them to war on 3 separate occasions. Our next guest was at the negotiating table when the dispute was finally settled. He now has a seat on the United Nations Security Council. He's seeking global peace while representing Ecuador on the world stage. I talked to Hernan Perez, Ecuador's ambassador to the UN.
During a visit to New York City, I had a chance to meet Hernan Perez, the Ecuadorian ambassador at the United Nations, to get his thoughts on Ecuador's re-entry into the Security Council, a UN mechanism in charge of ensuring global peace.
The national flag of Ecuador.
The Council has 5 permanent member states and 10 are elected to 2-year terms. The last time an Andean nation was a member of the UN Security Council was in 1991.
Ambassador, thank you, first of all, visiting with us. What an interesting time to be in your position, not just for what's happening in your country, which is kind of interesting, but also Ecuador being the chair of the Security Council. And as we know, that's rotated. And as a result, I mean, it's a lengthy period of time for a country like yours. I think somebody was saying earlier today, 31 years to wait to get to this position. So talk to me about the honor of that and also the responsibility of that.
Yes, it's true. We are honored to be sitting in the council. It has passed 31 years since we were there. It was another council, another world. The scenario was completely different. 1991, we are talking about the end of the Cold War. There was a lot of optimism around the world. Now we are facing new realities in the world. And more complex, the agenda has grown enormously from, and then the next time that we'll be there, perhaps we have to wait another 25 or 31 years, or 32 years to be visiting back, according to the statistics. So for Ecuador, it has been a great honor, yes. This is, and also, I want to underline the fact that we were elected with the vote of 190 votes out of 193 votes. We don't know which one are the 3 votes that didn't vote for us, but it's a huge majority. Few countries have been elected with such enormous support. So for us, it's a great responsibility to be sitting in the council, and we are doing our best to honor our constituency to respond in the best way possible.
Ambassador Perez has received a Doctor of Juridical Science degree as well as a Master's in Law from Harvard University. He is also Ecuador's former Minister of Public Education. In 1998, he was part of the first team trying to negotiate a peace deal with Peruvian officials over a territorial dispute.
If there's ever somebody who needs to be sitting in that chair talking about peace right now and understanding peace and how to get to peace, it's somebody like yourself. I mean, we look at Ukraine, we look at Haiti, we look at Sudan. There's so many hot spots right now, so much violence, and you understand war and the ripple effect and how it impacts people and countries and the importance of bringing people together and talking and dialogue. Can you talk to me about the enormous responsibility and what you bring to that role? Yeah,
we have that division with Peru for many years. It was very difficult for us to be in the table to talk about peace. We have a long dispute, a territorial dispute, one of the latest and longest dispute in South America, a territorial dispute. Finally, after negotiation, very hard, we bring together and we found a way to peace. And this is very important because it took us many years to cure this situation in Ecuador and in Peru. Now we are living in peace, side by side, Each party has to renounce something, and this and you're right. I mean, the experience that we got in negotiating the peace with Peru was and is very helpful for me in the council. We are facing hot spots, very critical, very difficult situation now. Each time that I sit there and we deal and we approach and we debate issues like Sudan or Ukraine, I somehow in my mind recall the days and the months of negotiations that I had back in 1995, 1996, that helped us to close this chapter that divides us, our two neighbors.
So what is the heart of a diplomat? Because I would think that there's so many frustrations along the way. You know, you feel like maybe you're making strides and then not so. It's incremental and it's difficult, isn't it?
It's difficult, and one of the things that I have noticed is that few people pay attention is what is going to happen after. Usually the parties are involved in today's crisis, but very little attention is paid to the after, to the future. So if for one moment you start to think what is going to happen after Ukraine ends the war, that maybe should drive diplomats, military, statesmen to approach this crisis in a different way. We have to build a framework of peace from the very beginning. We have to think, and maybe that will drive the parties to stop the wars, or at least to manage the conflict in a different way. But it's difficult. It's difficult. Human nature. I mean, you have to. Somehow you have to win even a few kilometers, and no matter how many people die for them.
From a diplomatic lens, do you see one more daunting than the other? I mean, you know, obviously Ukraine's occupied so much of the bandwidth when it comes to news coverage, but we're looking at Sudan now. Yeah. I think Haiti's kind of lost. It's in disarray, but it's kind of lost its place in the headlines. But it's also an area of concern.
It is an area, and I agree with you. Ukraine is not the only, is the latest, but not the only crisis that we are facing in the world. What makes a little different in the case of Ukraine is the effect in the impact in the economy, in the world economy, the inflationary pressure of the food around the world. But I agree, we cannot oversight other areas of conflict that we are facing, and we have been very clear in the council that we have to take a look to not to lose sight of the other area where there are a lot of need for peace and security.
What's it like being on the council? I mean, give us insights, because most of us just see the shot. We don't know. I mean,
it's a very you know, for a country that has been. I mean, we are a small country, but we are very proud of our tradition, of respect of international law, of respect of the seeking peaceful solution to conflicts. We bring our policy, our foreign policy, and now we are with the big players in there, and we can see firsthand, perhaps, that will be in firsthand the debate. I know that the council is now perhaps in a very difficult scenario due to the fact that one of the parties or one of the is involved in a war. But nonetheless, the fact that we are facing there the Palestinian question, the Sudanese, the Haiti. So we are every day the council is dealing with issues, listening, briefing, debating the issues, perhaps very, sometimes very heated debates and strong words sometimes, but still this is something that is very, very useful for peace. I mean, if you don't talk each other, even if you disagree, it's better than to be in the capital very far from the area. I mean, if you don't see each other, sooner or later something is going to happen. No?
We spoke to a gentleman who was involved in the negotiations to get the FARC and the Colombian government to actually sit down and try and mediate. And he said that the interesting thing is if you talk to both sides, both sides see the other as a culprit and they see themselves as a victim. And once you can get each side to look at the culprit and see them as a victim as well, suddenly you can kind of change. Yeah. There can be an evolution in thinking. Do you think that's true too?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Somehow we are playing some roles in these negotiations, and there are sometimes the need to shift, to shift around the roles and see what the perspective of the other side, and you start to learn because there have always been some middle ground where you can fix at the other and move on. I think that the key here is to think in the future, not in the past, because the past is already there. It's already we cannot change the past, but we can change the future.
In an effort to peacefully resolve international conflicts, the Security Council pushes for solutions through negotiation or intervention. This means the UN mechanism can impose sanctions or authorize the use of force in order to maintain or restore international peace and security, according to Chapters 6 and 7 of the UN Charter.
We've seen some of these images from Ukraine, an entire city just obliterated. And this gets to your point, people think they concentrate on the war, but what happens after the war? How important is it to kind of make sure that that conversation is part of the equation?
It's difficult. Difficult when there are so many interested around, very powerful interested, that goes from regional, international, economic, and even military interested in this conflict. I think that we have to wait a little bit more, unfortunately, but Ecuador now in the Council is cup holder, so we are with France in the issue of Ukraine, but from the humanitarian point of view. So we are dealing with that, we are bringing briefers and we're trying to put on the table is the humanitarian side of the dimension of this crisis. We are involved in bringing the attention to the Red Cross and be aware of the help of the human dimension, because conflicts unfortunately are affecting civilians, not only in Ukraine but everywhere. And that's something that Ecuador has been very interested in approaching in the Security Council.
It's interesting, you talk to some people and they say, oh, the UN's broken. They can't ever seem to agree on anything. They can't really, you look at all these crises, what are they doing about it? And I spoke to an advocate today who said, look, if the UN wasn't here, just think how bad it would be. Is that how you view things as well? And what do you say to the critics who say, oh, the UN never seems to get anything?
I can repeat here a phrase by one of the first UN Secretary General. He said that the UN was not created to take the world to heaven, but to avoid to go to hell. So at least we are not in the hell. That's enough. It's a lot. Yes, you're right. There are the image of the United Nations is sometimes is deteriorating because so many conflicts around, so many issues that cannot be coped and that cannot be solved. But on the other hand, I can tell you, there has not been a war conflict. We have been since 1945. As you see that, this is one of the factors. Has been the United Nations. Remember that the United Nations was the outcome of a war. People perhaps don't like what I'm going to say, but the United Nations was a military agreement of the 5 big powers that to avoid the mistakes made during the first decades of the 20th century, two wars, and decide to build a system, a different system, and where multilateralism was going to play a key role. And with all the problems that we have, with the Cold War, et cetera, still we have avoided a war conflagration. And this is something important. And I think that the UN has made a contribution, enormous contribution to avoid. We have regional conflict, serious conflict, of course, Africa, now Ukraine, etc. But we have been very clear that the United Nations has played a very important role in this conflict, in regional conflict, not to try to avoid the spillover of them.
The UN Secretary General has talked about how the Council in many ways needs to be reformed, updated, because it reflects the power relations post-World War II. This is a whole new era. If you were able to wave your magic wand, having been there, seated there, watching it, what type of changes would you make?
First of all, it's easy to forget that to change the charter, you have to follow a procedure. And there are a lot of problems in the middle. And so it's easy to bring ideas, to dream about, but we would prefer to have a very pragmatic approach. I think that the Council has to enlarge the number. We have to increase the number of elected members. I agree with that. I think that Latin America should have 4 seats. But we are not so inclined to have more permanent members. I think that the increased number of permanent members could create more difficult situation than the one thing. We think that if we enlarge the number of the elected members, giving more numbers in the regions, and perhaps if we can extend the period of the tenure from 2 years to 3 or 4 years, or we can keep in the 2-year period and be eligible for election. Somehow there will be a better, more inclusiveness in it. But the idea of having more permanent members with the veto power, which basically is sometimes misunderstood. I don't see that will be it's going to be, we can discuss that, but it's not going to be easy to amend the charter. That will require a willingness of the 5 permanent members, which I don't see that. Maybe if we bring more members, elected members, with all these changes, perhaps we have a different. But I agree with the Secretary General. We have to do something with the Council, and we have to do also with the Assembly, in general with the UN.
Let me ask you one final question
Sure.
before we go. This job seems so thankless. Every day you go to work, you kind of beat your brains in, you try and get sides to come together. It's tough, it's daunting. It's not a 9 to 5. You've got to be committed, it's passionate. How tough is it, and what do you do not to become discouraged?
It's very tough. I can tell you this. It's from the very early in the morning until night. I have to be in contact with my team. I have a wonderful team of people here, the best team we have in Ecuador. The diplomats are very devoted to the work, but the agenda is huge, and every day there are surprises, and we have to be prepared to take the position of Ecuador. It's a great responsibility. It's a great honor for me to represent my country, and well, I am still an idealist, and I think that through international law we can improve the life of millions of people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you for the chance.